Hi, this is Rob Sharp with Geared for Worship with my good friend Jeremy Asher from Temple Baptist Church in Ruston, Louisiana. And just wanted to talk with him about his Ableton journey and how his church is using Ableton and get into some things that we've worked on together. And so, Jeremy, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? We go way back. We were friends in college. We played together. How long have you been at Temple? And just tell us about your ministry.
Sure. So I've been at Temple this go around 8 years this month. So we had served in Texas after seminary in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for 12 years and had been away from Temple since our college ministry here 14 years prior. So we had an opportunity to come back to Temple in summer of 2012. And so we've been back in Ruston and happy to be raising our family in a great community here. So
awesome. Well, how many services do you guys run?
So right now we are back to our kind of normal schedule that we've been in for a few years. We have two contemporary services, one that's at 9 a.m. and the later contemporary service at 10:30, and then the sanctuary service, which is our blended worship style, and that's the one where I lead. We just meet at 9 o'clock on Sundays. And so I have a music associate, Zach, that's leading in our gathering contemporary services.
And so in your blended service, you have, and I know obviously a little bit about that church.
Sure, that's right.
We went there together. It obviously has an orchestra, a choir. Do you use like a praise team on a normal Sunday or?
Typically, no. In the current scenario of no choir, I really don't like to sing by myself, and so I've tried to pull in at least one other vocalist. And this Sunday, we're actually going to do an offertory and use 4 vocalists on that. But typically, it's when we're not in the COVID crazy season, orchestra and a choir from the loft.
Yeah. So, how long have you been using Ableton?
So Ableton, I probably knew about it before I came to Temple, but really didn't utilize it until we came here 8 years ago. And on a typical Sunday, if there's a song that we're leading that has multi-tracks, usually that we're either buying through multitracks.com or another supplier, will use multi-tracks for that song. A lot of times I will set up like a metronome count in just to make sure that those of us that are on in-ears, and our whole group is not on in-ears, but it's me, piano, drums, bass, and guitar. So core rhythm section, we're on the metronome, and that's kept us pretty close to being together as long as we've got good monitoring for the rest of the orchestra.
Now, I'm curious. So, is that a gear limitation, or is that a choice of saying, I don't want to go down that road with that group. I'd rather just have the core kind of rhythm section using it, or what's your thought process there?
Probably a little bit of both, and maybe some angst from people in our group that just aren't comfortable, playing a horn, having your ears plugged up is just not a good way of playing. And we've tried, particularly on special events for a Christmas, an Easter, or a patriotic program, we have set up like a headphone distribution amp that's got an output from an Aviom that's going in, and they usually, if they utilize it, they'll have just one earbud in, and but overall it's something that they're just not super comfortable with, and I didn't want to push the envelope. Stage volume really has not been much of an issue. We really just have like a floor monitor for our primary brass, and everybody else just kind of, if they're not on in-ears, they're just kind of relying on the acoustics in the room to stay connected. So I don't know that it's an ideal setup so that everybody's right there playing together. but we've kind of made it work, and that's what they're accustomed to. So
Yeah, it's I think it's different for every church, every situation. I don't think there is personally an ideal
mhm.
scenario. I knew at the churches I was at, what I was doing was ideal for that situation, for that time period, for me. But I think it's real important for people to um, just figure out what's going to be best for their situation. And there's like you said, there's the angst of dealing with certain members who have fear and trepidation over moving that direction.
Sure.
Sometimes it's not even a matter of what I call relational equity. It's like,
Right.
do I want to spend that equity that I've built up on this particular thing, or do I want to wait and use it for a different discussion? Uh, so
Yeah,
you've
that's
been
true.
so in your blended service, if I'm hearing you right, you don't always use Ableton, or if you do use Ableton, it's not on every song.
Correct.
Or even if you do use it on every song, it means you don't have stems on every song.
Not necessarily stems. That's correct.
Yeah, I find that a lot of people think, well, if I don't have stems, then there's no reason using a click, or um, there's no need to do that. But
Sure.
my,
It's
go ahead.
I was just going to say, when I'm typically using like metronomes, it's going to be transitioning in between songs that really just aren't tempo matched closely at all. And so we'll try to, segue the transition to where the count in, and I usually do a 2-measure count in. That's kind of a part of the template that we have, but it just gives plenty of opportunity for everybody on the in ears to get that new tempo established. And we'll try, if we're coming out of an up tempo song and going to a slower song, we'll try to have the count in where it's smooth, and we can begin the second song before we kind of finish rolling out of the
Yeah.
first one. But right now, that is something that our drummer, so our Ableton setup,
Mhm.
and in our sanctuary is set up. Our laptop with an LPD8 controller is set up for our drummer to utilize, and so that is a little bit tricky if he's trying to finish a song, and I'll give him the look, and he'll reach over and either stop the first thing and start the next, or just roll right into the next thing. So that has it's kind of put a little bit more, a lot more responsibility actually on the drummer, and thankfully he's just been awesome to roll with it. Just having that new level of Ableton track running responsibility, and I'm trying to think. I don't know that there's ever been a moment where I've had to look over and give the kill signal because we've gotten out of sync. So thankfully, it's gone smoothly in that regard.
Well, that's a blessing in and of itself.
Sure.
I find being a drummer myself, I find most drummers would rather do that than have someone else do it, just because you want to know when that count off is coming in.
Sure.
You don't want it taking you by surprise, as the even though other people are on the click, you're still considered the primary timekeeper.
Absolutely.
So
I kind of think of it like the old 1, 2, 3,
that's
4.
right. That's right. It's the
It's the
same
new
thing.
digital version of the drummer count off. So
That's right. So um, now your modern service or your contemporary service, you do use
it's
tracks every Sunday.
all stems all the time, with pretty rare exception. During our COVID live stream only, we actually were just doing a blended. It was streaming from our contemporary venue, primarily our contemporary venue players, but we would blend in some hymns, and we didn't have stems for a lot of these hymns that we were doing. So it was, that was a neat opportunity for me and my music associate to lead together.
Yeah.
It was definitely a stretching time, just because it was songs that they weren't super familiar with, and we didn't have stems, which is something they're accustomed to playing every song with that. So
Yeah, I think there's value to having stems, and I think there's value to uh, I hate to say it this way, standing on your own 2 feet, in terms of your own musicianship and just making it happen with
right.
what you have.
Well, it
I
definitely
think
it exposes a lot,
that's right.
because you don't even just a pad or something, which there were times that we would use pads from that was running. I think it's called Pads Live
Okay.
from an iPad, and so we would just, what key are we in? What kind of ambiance are we kind of listening for? And we'd
Yeah.
kind of have a pad running while we were doing some of those hymns. So it wasn't really stems, but it was kind of an auxiliary instrument. We were using that to just to help kind of give some cohesion to the
Sure.
sound coming out of a stems and a full mix down into just piano only. Sorry if I'm talking with my hands too much.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'll do it too, so you feel better about
Right,
it.
there you go.
But I think I think one of the great things about Ableton in general is that you can tailor it to your needs, and
Sure.
that you can just do the click and guide. You can add pads. You can add a simple loop. You can do full blown stems, whatever you need. I think a lot of people get hung up on, well, it's cheating because of this, or if I use this or that, it's all about your situation and what your needs are and how it's going to help you eventually.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what are some things that you would like to do in the future with Ableton?
I do think having, and I kind of got spoiled to this, and I'm sure we'll kind of get to the projects that you
Yeah.
helped us with through Geared for Worship. Um, I would love to get to a point. I feel like we struggle with transitions between songs, and right now we're just, our service order is different because we're not taking up an offering in the service, so we don't have that typical kind of choir or orchestra special for the offering. So it's congregational. Um,
You don't
anyway,
have that hard break where you can reset and
right. So
yeah.
right now we kind of, our typical flow, we start with 2 congregational songs, and then we have a prayer and our announcements, and then we're up for a song, and then it's, let's talk about the offering that we're doing online, or through buckets at the door, and then we're up for another song. And so right now those transitions feel very, I feel like we already kind of struggle with just cohesion and seamless, as I mentioned before, because Landon, our drummer, is having to, okay, you're coming out of this song and now you're flowing to the next song.
Right.
And to me, I feel like I've seen what can be possible when we had the like the Christmas template. That was the first one that we worked with you to help us with our Christmas program. And the fact that you could program in those transitions. Do you want a loop or a pad that's playing here? Right now, those are all, if we don't do it in the moment, we don't get it. If we don't nail that
Right.
timing coming out of song 1 into song 2, then we've missed it. And so knowing that those are the types of things, those transitions that you're planning them out ahead of time, right? So
Right.
where do you need a hard break? Where do you need to pause that track? And then after the pastor says what he's going to say, then you resume, and then you're kind of back into the next phase of the Ableton setup. So I think I really, really, really loved having that for our Christmas program, which obviously that's a huge cantata, more music than we ever do at any other point in the
Right.
year as far as in a service. But I've seen the value of having the ability to just pre-plan. I mean, everything's pre-planned, to some degree. You're looking at planning center and transition times and things like that. And so if we could get to a point where at least in the sanctuary service, if we were using Ableton more as a transition aid,
Yeah.
I think that would help a ton.
Sure.
So that's something that I would like to utilize, is maybe having Ableton helping us with those transitions,
Hmm.
and just smoothly coming out of one song. Maybe it's into a prayer time and there's just a pad or something playing that our accompanist would, play on top of that. Um, so I'd love to do some of that more on a consistent week to week basis.
Yeah. And I'm sure you, like a lot of folks right now, you're just trying to figure out your head from your tail and
Yeah, there's a
what
lot
does
of
this world look like this week? What
sure,
does the service look like this week? Because we're all adapting all the time.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's a flux time, but you went ahead and kind of transitioned there for me. Uh, One of the services that Geared for Worship offers is doing large scale productions and creating all the playback for that, even automation for that.
Right.
And that's what we did for you last Christmas. And then I had the honor of getting to actually sit in on the program with you guys, and that was a
Yes.
blast. But what did you find? I know with some guys, they're so how can I say it? They have a tight grip on things, which is understandable.
Hmm.
How was it you letting go and just saying, "Hey, here's my stuff. You put it together." Like, were you okay with that? What was that experience like?
Oh man. Well, I've known you for a long time, and so just on a trust level, absolutely, totally comfortable doing that. Um, I know probably 3% of what needs to be known of Ableton, and 103% of what needs to be known in Ableton. And honestly, just being able to, really the hardest thing as far as me preparing to use Ableton last Christmas was collecting all the stems and the multi-tracks and making sure that they were in the right keys. And I think really once that happened and we had it in your hands, I mean, it was incredible being able to have, not only for the production um, itself, right, where we
Right.
actually got to present everything to our church and community. To me, having access to all those, it really forced me to get all that stuff done, not the week before the program. It
Yeah.
forced me to get it done because you had deadlines. I mean, you're like, get me the stuff and I can get it for you, and this will help you. And I heard you say that. And then we got to experience how incredible it was in a rehearsal
Yeah.
where we had the ability, with the choir, and they're not on in ears, but I would have the metronome running in our choir room. So tempo changes and all those things. It was repeatable in our rehearsals, which absolutely, I mean, it made a world of difference in being able uh, to play that for the actual
Sure.
program, because they weren't relying on me trying to figure out tempo adjustments, and every time I direct it, I'm going to do it slightly different. As much as I
Right.
would try to nail a tempo change, it's just simply not going to happen.
So
Um,
would you say that it actually gave your choir, um, I mean, besides giving them a window into what you were dealing with and what you were listening to, but it gave them a level of comfort and trust knowing, hey, it's going to be the same way every time.
Absolutely. And I would say they definitely benefited from it, even though they weren't using the technology, right? We
Right.
didn't have in-ears for 60 people in the choir, but the fact that they knew that we were rehearsing it at the same tempo every time,
Mhm.
and the fact that, and I think a trust level, like you were saying, the fact that they knew that what I was listening to is the same thing. Nobody could say, well, you did it. Can you take it slower? We
Yeah.
did it faster last week. And you could just say definitively, like this is matching the demo. So if you're listening to your demo and practice tracks, what we're recreating matches that exactly. I mean, beat for beat.
Yeah.
And
One thing I know about how we were, I don't know if raised is the right way, but we're both classically trained musicians. Went through bachelor's music programs. We both went to seminary. You have an MDiv, I have a master's in music, but we were both involved in the School of Music, and you had I guess, a minor in church music ministry, or how does that work?
Started with the minor and then ended up dropping it and just ended
Okay.
up with an MDiv. It was almost two separate master's degrees, and I was not interested in that. I was finished with school. Okay.
I understand. I understand. You know, if I think if I had to redo it, I'd probably get an MDiv too, because there was a lot of lap over, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh,
Right.
but that's besides the point. But I would say one thing that we heard, a kind of a mantra, is that the conductor is always right. You know, and this idea of the director being the musical mastermind of the entire situation, and really training your people to watch you and just be clued into you. And I'm not just saying this on the seminary level, but bachelors. Sometimes I always took that as, seems a little power trippy to me, you know.
That could be perceived as that.
And
I mean, we really are control freaks. Everybody knows
yeah,
it.
absolutely. There's an aspect of what we do that we wouldn't be doing it if we didn't want to be in control.
Sure, you can't have 50 people setting the tempo
That's right.
for a song. There's got to be a master clock.
That's right.
Yeah.
Early on, even before I started with Ableton, I was using clicks in a live situation all the way back in 2000. And what I found, one of the reasons I did it is I had my pianist was out for a little while, and I had a sub in, and she was very confident in her ability to assess tempos, and and
Did that create friction
it did.
a little
It
bit?
did. As me, as the instrumental minister, and as the drummer who's setting the tempo. One thing I decided to do was just, hey, we're gonna go. We're gonna put at least the rhythm section on a click,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden it wasn't a subjective. I mean, it was subjective. It wasn't objective. Um, it reduced conflict. It took the friction out of it, because it's like,
Right.
nope, this is the tempo. That's, you're rushing it or you're
It
pushing
says
it.
right there on the music, it's 98 BPM.
That's right. It doesn't feel, it took feelings out of it and
Sure.
made it a concrete matter. So I think that's one of the huge things, just about, other than Ableton, just in-ear monitoring and the ability to get people on a click. I mean, that's huge,
Sure.
Um, so your big thing with the Christmas thing was just seeing the value of it in a preparation side of things, having it out front in advance. One thing I find with a lot of guys is they can handle the week to week load, but it's hard to get that far out front. I mean, you've got planning, you're planning rehearsals,
Right.
you're doing all this stuff. Like, when am I going to have time to sit down and do all this Ableton stuff? And like you said, many times you're right up to the wire doing it.
Oh, that's the old way, and I'm vowing to change my ways. Okay.
but having it in advance for you and being able to rehearse with it, that was a bigger benefit. I'm not going to say a bigger benefit, but I remember at the time you telling me that changed your world of just.
Well, and it was, I think, for several reasons. One of the limitations and even the way that right now we're using Ableton, we're in clip view. Just
session.
Launch a session view, yes. So just launch a song. Well, in a rehearsal, if you need to stop and get back to a certain point, when you're in session view, it's kind of possible, but it's really not possible. And so a lot of times, even right now, Sunday mornings, if we have to stop one of our multi-track, songs, we've either got to rehearse the part that I need to look at without that metronome, especially tempo changes and things like that. That's where you need to rehearse, and you kind of lose. You don't have an easy way of rehearsing that repeatably.
Yeah.
And so one of the things about the projects that you have created for us is running them in arrangement view, where you can go, here's a key change, here's the big finish at the end when everybody slows down, but they're not slowing down together. And you can just go right. The ability to go back to those markers is absolutely critical, because again, you can repeatably rehearse the way that it's supposed to sound, but B, the way it's going to be every time you play that song.
That's right.
So having points within the song, those markers where we could go back and rehearse. I don't want to run a 6-minute song start to finish.
Right.
Every time I need to fix the ending, right? I just want to I want to start at measure 108 or whatever. And so that was really critical. And then one of the other really neat features was having the Touch OSC template, where I could have an iPad and I'm just selecting what songs, instead of me having to turn my back on the choir or and I'm talking now about our choir rehearsal. So we don't have the Ableton rig from the sanctuary.
Right.
Got an iMac in our choir room here. And instead of me turning my back on everybody in the room and trying to get to the song I need, having the Touch OSC template, where it was, I think for us, it was a pretty simple template. It was just, pick the song, and what do you want to do? Start it or stop it. And so it was, in that situation, it was a really simple template. And I think we had the ability to mute different subgroups.
That's right.
So
yeah.
If I only wanted to hear the choir vocals and the metronome, I could mute everything else. And again, as a rehearsal tool, that changed I'm like, I want that for every song that we do.
Well, I tell you, you're going to love this year the new template that I've come out with for Touch OCS. So it has all the same controls plus. So it actually has the fader, so you can adjust volumes on the subgroups, on the returns. You can also the biggest thing. I think two things. One is that you now have control over entire song volumes at the iPad level. So say you get into a rehearsal and the stems for this one song, they're just hot, well, you can go and there's a little dial and you can just dial that back just for that one song.
Sure.
Another great feature is that there are multiple pages in this template, and you have 32 song parts that are mappable. They're already programmed. All you have to do is set your locators. So say a song, you only need a couple of places that you want to rehearse. You just add those in and map them to those. Or you can get really detailed, and our template, the Gear for Worship template, you can actually play in the locators. You just let the song play through and it's going to populate the locators for you. And then you're just mapping them. So it's I think it's going to even give you that much more control, instead of even looking over at a computer now to find that starting point that you want to find. It's going to be on the iPad right there of, hey, verse 2 or chorus, here's the key change. So it's going to give you even more flexibility. I'm really excited about the release of our Touch OCS. And the great thing is that we have all of our Touch OSC templates are coordinated with 6 different controllers. And so you can say, once you may need all that control in a choir rehearsal, but you may not need it in your instrumental rehearsal. Well, your drummer still can use his hardware, the LPD8, which I'm a big fan of. Or if you come into that rehearsal and they're already going and you say, hey, let's go back and do this spot. You can pull up your iPad, connect to the computer, and jump in there. You're not taking control away from him. You're just inserting another control surface.
Control. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you're going to really enjoy that. And let me see, what else was I going to ask you here? I think that pretty much covered it, but I just encourage those who are watching this, if you're interested in having Geared for Worship control, give you greater control with our templates, to check out our online store at gearedforworship.com. Or if you're interested, like Jeremy, of, hey, I would really like to start practicing my Christmas in October, and I'd like to have that done for me, we can help you with that. And in most cases, it's usually like a week to 2 week turnaround, depending on the number of songs. Yeah. And it's going to be completely tempo mapped. You're going to see you're going to have a built-in locators track where you see all of that right there for you. I tell you what, Jeremy, would you mind? Do you have your set from Christmas handy?
I think I pulled it up.
And we can kind of show folks what we're talking about here.
So let me get into. All right. So I think I've got to go share screen. And it's going to share live. I apologize. It's asking me to open system preferences and give.
That's okay.
All this. That's all right. Give me just a moment. And I think. Ooh.
It's probably on a hard drive or something.
No. I've got it pulled up, but I don't think it's letting me share my screen unless I quit Zoom.
We don't want to do that.
Pause and let me give you access to it.
That's okay. That's okay. I can insert. I can insert later or
sure
my version. I can show everybody.
Okay.
But so one thing we haven't, and in your situation, it's a little different than some. For a lot of folks, one thing I also do with these projects is they will give me their Pro Presenter presentation, and I will automate that as well. You guys
did that for 2021.
Yeah. You guys also did a little bit. I didn't have to set anything up for this, but you did do something. Was it with
there's a video.
PVP3?
It was a what?
Was it PVP3?
Yes.
So video player.
Right. We have a media director, Andy Carter, and he's just about as geeky and nerdy as you are, sir. But he figured out how to add a time code track.
That's right.
To Ableton that was triggering a video from Pro Video Player that had metronomes. I mean, we were listening to a multi-track, but we had to have the video that played at just the right time. And that was fun to get to figure it out. We ended up we were trying to start the time code at the same, like as soon as you hit start on Ableton, it was trying to send time code that PVP needed to immediately hear. And so we ended up having to get it to kind of run a little bit of time code to give just a split second for PVP to hear it and cue and begin the video at the right time code. And once we got that figured out, again, it was repeatable. We could rehearse it that way, and we knew. Now, it was the Thursday, I think, before the Sunday program. I think that was something that we added.
It was
after our dress rehearsal. Like it was crazy, It
Yeah,
was crazy, but
and that's something I
it
have
worked.
done for other folks, and I
Okay.
love telling people that the the benefit. A lot of people say, "Well, can't you just queue up that in ProPresenter?" And you can, you can do that, but what you will find is that it's hard to not have a little drift at the end. By the end, you're is it a little behind or a little ahead?
Mm,
You
yeah.
know, there's just I mean, just being a little bit off. Um, so it keeps it perfect. Now, is your common congregation member going to notice it's a little off? Maybe not.
Hmm.
Um, so you can do it in Pro Presenter, but the value of having Pro Video Player 3 or something like Resolume is that the video chases time code.
Hmm.
So, and what I mean by that is if you want to say, let's take that transition again, coming out of that song and going into that next song,
Video takes you
boom,
to that
and the
spot.
video catches you right there, and you get to
Sure.
see that transition.
Yeah.
And if you need to make adjustments at that point of, hey, let's push that another beat, forward, like that next song. Let's change that adjustment just a little. You can still do that. So
Sure.
it gives you that benefit of
You
hey, we
can
got
jump
off
in
somewhere.
midstream in a rehearsal.
Yeah, and and I've done it both ways, but I would prefer to do it in time code
Mhm.
when you're triggering video anytime, just because um, the only way to proof that uh, in ProPresenter is to watch it through multiple times, and then you have to, okay, well, let's move it a little bit, let's move it a 30-second note this way,
Mhm.
okay, and watch it again. No, it's still off, it'll
Right.
be on to a certain point, and then you'll start to get that drift. So imagine doing that for, say, if you, like in your case, you had one video, but say if you had a production that had a ton of video, every song had video,
Hmm.
14 songs or even 12 songs. That's a lot of time trying to sync that up. So it's kind of a hassle. Uh,
Hmm.
so I would say make your life easy. Look at Pro Video Player 3. Um, Works off LTC time code. There's a great site that you can go to, ltc.com. It's spelled kind of funky, like ELTEECE
Right. I
something.
think we may have actually used that just to create that audio time
That's
code.
right. It's just audio time code, striped audio. I tell people it sounds a lot like that phrase from Dumb and Dumber. You want to hear the most annoying sound in the world? You know,
Like a modem, an old dial-up modem sound.
that's right.
Yeah.
It's
You don't want
very.
to make sure it doesn't end up in your in-ears. Let's just
That's
say
right.
that.
That's right. You want to make
Yeah.
sure it is routed only to there. One of the things, if you're considering this, is that I have run into in the past, and I don't know that it played it. I remember we were doing some troubleshooting at the dress rehearsal with this, but sometimes sending it through Dante, um, it does not like it. Um, or certain consoles don't like it. Lighting consoles don't like it for sure.
Mm.
They don't want any processing. They just want pure audio coming straight in. Uh, so that's something, if you're considering doing that, is make sure you have at least one solid audio run, old school XLR from front to back,
Mhm.
that you can do that with. And you can always get amplifiers if you need multiple sources of it, that kind of thing. But yeah, I would highly suggest, if you're doing a lot of syncing, uh, getting Pro Video Player 3. So, anyways, that's just a little extra bonus there. But looking forward to working with Temple again this Christmas on your project. I can't wait for you to try out the new Touch OSC template, and I think you're really going to love that. And we need to get you hooked up with some Geared for Worship skins too for your LPD8. So
I can go with that.
yeah, well, I'll show an image of that after.
I should have brought my. I've improved the sticker that I've got on my pads, so we know, track up and down, play, stop. bail, 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 all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But my old school one has like gaff tape and all this other stuff on the buttons themselves. It was pretty. It was a little bit janky. I got to be honest.
Everyone, I mean, people try gaff tape, they try colored electrical tape, and that's the worst. Ooh.
Well, stuff doesn't stick to those pads. I don't know what those things are made of. But.
Yeah, they're a very unique surface. In fact, I can show. I believe I have some pictures on here, and I can share my screen here. So there is a picture of the LPD8 skin. So you have stop, play, pause, fade, which is a new feature that you don't know about. So
And
you can actually
I would love to have that. That's right.
fade out the tracks over a course of a bar and then fade them back in if you get back on or need them back in for the next song. Solo for soloing the click, next, and previous. And then this new feature right here is loop. So you can set up predetermined loops, or you can set up simple repeats, and they will actually reset themselves. So if you have a predetermined loop in one song and you get to the next one, you don't have to reset anything. It's going to reset itself once you move on from that loop.
Oh, wow.
And then of course you have 8 knobs over here, and this is great to have your 8 sends out, or if you have that many. I don't think you do, but I like sending 8 channels normally, so that's how I have things mapped with that. But okay. And those stay on great, and not only that, they don't leave a residue. So if you wanted to later on say, I want to use this for a keys controller instead of playback, you just peel them off. You may want to take a little rubbing alcohol and clean off things, but it's not going to be a thick residue like you get with gaff tape or electrical tape.
Oh, that's the worst.
Janky. I think churches need to remember is that just because you don't have stems doesn't mean you don't have the ability to create a click or a guide track to create consistency. You're not just out there, and I do that quite often. People will send me older songs especially for Christmas and patriotic, and I'll just take the demo, tempo map, and make recordings. And on this one recording is such a classic. I said, I need to just go ahead and make a sound effects loop for that because that's going to come in handy.
That's awesome. Hey, there'll be a lot of other churches that are probably going to be interested in that.
I knew back in the day, like this is how we achieved that. Is that, well, one, the Canon stuff, we may have something to a percussion thing like a bass drum or something do that. But the flyover, there'd be someone back there with a CD player, and they would hit play at just the right time for that. That's way before DAWs. There might have been DAWs out there like Digital Performer, but
right.
But now things can be so smooth and integrated, and you're just, that makes things simple. Like I think even your media guy saw the value of that after getting your time code set up, of just like, oh, well, man, that's stress-free now. I don't have to worry about that.
Well, and a lot of rehearsals, we don't have a full media team, right? And
that's right.
If it's me and the choir and orchestra, we have the sound system turned on. There's nobody mixing that real time. And again, it gives us the ability to have repeatable rehearsals, consistency in rehearsing. And you don't have to have, volunteers that are there.
And you're actually
rehearsals and that kind of thing. We love volunteers. Let me say that.
Absolutely. But you want to respect the volunteers' time.
Sure. Because there'd be a lot of sitting around getting ready to punch that CD player for that one sound effect.
That's right. That's right. So So if you can do things, and I tell people this all the time, if you're considering automation and you're concerned about your volunteers not feeling valued, one, you can show them value and with your words, with gifts, I mean with encouragement, um, with being prepared and you having stuff in advance for them. But you can also show them value by raising the expectation of what they do. For instance, lighting. If you have lights, um, get your folks involved in the programming of the lights and then let Ableton automate what they create. So they're seeing their creation come to life. They still feel valued. They were a part of the creative experience. Now you've got someone who is better trained on that board and knows their way around, and that type of stuff. Instead of thinking, same for ProPresenter. Let's let's think that our volunteers can do more than hit spacebar. Let's have them proof grammatically. Let's get them involved in how to edit backgrounds and get a little more graphically involved. I tell people all the time, as well as I do, I love Planning Center. And I think it's one of the biggest, like Inner Monitoring and Planning Center have changed worship ministry forever. Those two things alone. But the thing with Planning Center is that just like any other tool, our people get used to it and take it for granted. And sometimes it's hard to get our musicians to listen to those tracks. Those demos. They're going to come in fairly prepared, and by Sunday they're going to be there, and they know that we know that, and sometimes schedules in the week are busy and things like that. But what I have found is that if it's hard to get your musicians to listen to that, and they have all the resources, they have the music in front of them, they have sometimes you even provide click tracks on Planning Center. Mm-hmm. If you can't get your musicians to do that, which is usually your most committed group, do you think your ProPresenter person is actually going to be listening to those songs in advance? Probably not. And they don't have the ProPresenter file to rehearse with either. So it's Sunday. So we're giving our one of the most musically impacting positions for the congregation and for the team to a non-musician who's unfamiliar with the music. That's it. It can be scary. Mm-hmm. So, if we can get our volunteers involved in the creation process, let people do what people do, which is create stuff, creativity, that buzzword, creatives. We're all trying to get, how do we lead creatives?
Sure.
So we help them be creative, and then we let a computer do what computers do, which is give us consistency. Mm-hmm. So things to think about for those of you out there thinking about automation and wondering, hey, how do I balance that with valuing team members? It comes down to leadership. Like, all these are just tools. But it all boils down to leadership and how are you going to lead your team? How are you going to pastor your team? How are you going to cast a vision for your team? And I've had I know Temple pretty well, and I've had the pleasure of seeing and the privilege of being in rehearsals with you and seeing how you pastor and how you lead in those big situations. And I'm proud of the work that you're doing there and how you're leading folks. Thank you. Just keep up the good work, man. And thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Glad to be here, Rob. Thanks.